that kind of things.
It's like the other reality.
You guys can see that the reality is other things that people in news or things used to say.
Hey everyone, I'm Tim, and I've just finished a 9-month odyssey around Latin America. Now I'm reopening my diaries, and this time I'm bringing you along with me. Week by week, country by country, all the colors, all the craziness, all the food, all the music, and all the splendor. 9 months when each morning was a new adventure. The road was my companion, and Latin America cast its spell on me. This is my Latin America Diaries. Welcome back to my Latin America Diaries, and welcome to Medellín, Colombia. This would be the next country on my list of destinations around this incredible region. And coming to Colombia, it sort of felt like it was a long time coming. I have been teaching Colombian students in English language colleges in Australia since 2007. I've made friends with many Colombians over the years, and even when I think back to my childhood, my neighbors in the northern suburbs of Sydney when I was very little, they were Colombian as well. They originally hailed from Cali. So coming to Colombia sort of felt very familiar. It was almost like a homecoming in a way. And it was something that was on my list for a very long time. Now, in honor of my first video from Colombia, I am wearing my Nobel Real Colombia flag bracelet. This is a handmade jewelry project by a Colombian friend of mine. And if you'd like one for yourself, I've included the details in the video description below. I touched down in Medellín, Colombia's second largest city, in the early evening. The customs queue took what felt like forever, and then I took a taxi to the Laureles area, which was where I would be staying with a friend of mine, Javier. The next morning we set out to explore the city. Medellín is nestled in a spectacular mountain valley. Even as the plane descended, it was incredible. Verdant, rugged mountains stretching out beneath the clouds. I had seen mountains in Mexico, yes, but this felt completely different. The landing in Medellín was unforgettable. The entire city seems cradled in the Andes. Every street you look down ends with mountains, sometimes close, sometimes further away. It's a breathtaking setting. If you'd like to see more from Colombia, please make sure that you like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified when I upload more videos from this series. And if you like what you're seeing, please tell your family and friends about it and share my content. It would really mean a lot to me. Our first day in Medellín took us to a mountaintop village in the middle of the city, which is designed like a traditional Colombian village amid the bustling metropolis. So the first thing that you need to understand about Medellín when you are here is that basically the city doesn't occupy a very large area. In fact, the city is basically built between these mountain ranges, and it occupies this space in this really fairly narrow valley, and all of the suburbs of the city are actually built up the sides of these hills. So everywhere you go in Medellín, there is a view. While we were there, we got to try a local treat, salpicon. It's basically made of chopped fruits and some syrups. Absolutely delicious, but incredibly sweet. We also tried bandeja paisa, a uniquely local dish which is sometimes touted as the national dish of Colombia, but which truly belongs to this region. It's a lot like the full English breakfast or an Australian big breakfast. Think lots of meat and beans. As I mentioned, the countryside around Medellín was very different from what I had seen in Mexico. Although the Yucatan Peninsula is tropical, and as is Medellín, they're both quite different, and a lot of this has to do with the mountainous terrain of Colombia. Comparing Mexico to Colombia in this way is like comparing apples and oranges. The climate in Medellín is also famously very pleasant. It's never too cold and never too hot. It's often referred to as the city of eternal spring. This brings me to an important point about the climate in Colombia. Although Colombia is an equatorial country, it's not tropical in the classic sense. Because it's equatorial, it doesn't experience seasons, perhaps more dry or more wet periods of the year, but no great variations in temperature. Instead, the variations in temperature are dictated by altitude. The higher up the mountain you go, the colder it gets, and the lower down the mountains, the more traditionally tropical it would appear. Medellín is the capital of the Colombian department of Antioquia. Departments in Colombia operate a little bit like states do in other countries. And the people of Medellín and Antioquia are known as Paisas and are noted for their distinctive culture. Of course, Medellín is also noted for its tumultuous history, which is something that we'll touch on shortly. Medellín is also known for its vibrant nightlife, and on our first night there we went out to experience that, sampling some of the city's energy in the neighborhood of Poblado. The next morning we headed out to Comuna 13, or Commune 13. This is the part of the city which is most famously associated with the city's cartel and narco-trafficking history. Now a quick note here, and that's that I didn't come to Medellín with the intention of focusing on the city's history with drug trafficking. From what I know, and I like to think of myself as a sort of friend of Colombia, the city has largely suffered as a result of its history rather than benefited from it. However, Comuna 13 is undeniably part of Medellín's story, and it's also an important artistic hub today, known for street art, murals, and performance art. So my goal was to experience it as part of the city's history without letting that be the main focus of my visit. Javi and I enlisted the help of a local guide to show us around. His rates were much more economical than those of the city guides who initially approached us as we arrived in Comuna 13. After taking the guided tour around there, we certainly felt comfortable enough to be walking around on our own. Visiting Comuna 13 is fascinating. You learn about the community's history and also about the efforts that have gone into making this hillside neighborhood safer and providing opportunities for underprivileged residents who might otherwise have been drawn into the drug trade. It's colorful, artistic, and there's a real sense of community. The rhythm of reggaeton reverberates through these streets. Reggaeton, the musical genre that combines reggae, Jamaican dancehall, and hip-hop, emerged in Panama in the 1980s and then really hit the big time in Puerto Rico in the 1990s. However, it was via pirate radio stations that were playing reggaeton in the streets of Medellín that this musical genre really cemented itself as the rhythm of the capital of Antioquia. Nowadays, some of the scene's biggest names, such as J Balvin, Karol G, Fade, and Maluma have all hit the big time after emerging from the streets of Medellín. All of this, of course, has a dark side, and for anyone who feels the need to defend Colombia against allegations of drug trafficking and the narco trade, please know that I'm only bringing this up because I get asked about it all the time. It's not because I really want to talk about it. However, I do feel that it needs addressing because if you're not sure, you can, I'm sure, check the comments of this video and you will see people asking about it. So I think that the best way to explain this is with a bit of context. So the simplest version of the history goes like this. In the 1970s, as the Colombian government's control began to weaken in certain parts of the country, the illicit drug trade, especially cocaine, became very popular in parts of the world, including in the United States. If you look at the map, Colombia and the United States are not very far apart, so this meant that it became very easy to smuggle cocaine from Colombia into the United States. Of course, while the Colombian government's control weakened, drug cartels kind of swept into the fray and began to gain power. The most infamous of these cartels was the Medellín cartel under the control of the drug lord Pablo Escobar. And in parts of Colombia, the drug cartels actually began to have more influence than the state itself. The hillside community of Comuna was in particular very heavily affected. During the ensuing years, there was a lot of violence as the government attempted to regain control. There were acts of terrorism and bloody crackdowns, and eventually Pablo Escobar was killed, which arguably set in motion the peace process, which still continues to this day. A lot of this history became very well known internationally through news coverage and later through the Netflix series Narcos. However, many Colombians feel that Narcos and a lot of documentaries and series like that, they actually glamorize that era of Colombian history, and they don't really focus on the human suffering and real horror that those years inflicted upon the country. As such, this era is absolutely part of Colombian history, but it's also a very sensitive topic for many Colombians. I have very mixed feelings about visiting places like Comuna Tresa. To go there, it really feels as if it has transitioned away from the horrors of the 1980s and 90s into a kind of dark tourism Disneyland. Many visitors, almost exclusively foreigners, come to Medellín to experience the thrill of walking the streets where Pablo Escobar once ran his trade, or to get a glimpse of the history's infamous past.
And is much of it still like this? Is a lot of it still like this, or is it changing?
No, it was changing, but not too much. That kind of things.
It's like the other reality.
You guys can see that the reality is other things that people in news or things used to say.
Of course, many Colombians and many people from Medellín do not want their city to be defined by this era of history. However, it has become a very lucrative tourist trade. Opinions on this are very divided. There are a group of people who feel that it should be really left in the past and not talked about. There's another group of people who feel that it is part of the history and therefore should be acknowledged. And then there's people who embrace this fully and see the opportunity to turn pain into profit by selling things like memorabilia, t-shirts emblazoned with Pablo Escobar's face, and fake passports of drug cartel figures. While I was at the airport waiting in line at passport control at Medellín airport when I first arrived, there were two American guys behind me, and they were talking amongst themselves about how they couldn't wait to get through passport control and finally begin their weekend of living out their Pablo Escobar fantasies in Medellín. Like, really? For me, I do think that there is value in acknowledging and learning about the history. However, I did leave Comuna Tresa with a very uncomfortable feeling that I was very close to, if not right on the line, between learning about the history and commercializing it. I'll leave it up to you to make up your own opinions about this. On one of our last days in Medellín, we headed out to the cute mountainside village of Guatapé. Guatapé is gorgeous. It's colorful, it's set amid some stunning scenery, and it's really the kind of place I imagine when I think of the Colombian countryside. High altitude, green mountains, and quaint colonial villages. We stopped at a small cafe for breakfast and tasted some buñuelos.
Okay, what are we eating here?
Buñuelos.
And what is a buñuelo?
Oh my god.
And it's like basically cheese bread, yeah? Do I just bite into it? Like, okay. It tastes cheesy. Good though. I can see more cheese in there actually, look.
After breakfast, we had a bit of time to walk through the village and did some souvenir shopping. before making our way to Piedra del Peñol. This rock is a striking monolith that juts dramatically out of the surrounding countryside. A few decades ago, it belonged to a local landowner who decided to turn it into a tourist attraction by charging people to climb it. So of course, climb it we did. It takes 740 steps to reach the top.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We are about to begin. Javi is still with me even though he doesn't want to be on the video. Here we go. Javi, how many steps are we up to?
Almost 600 now.
It feels like it.
And when we eventually did reach the top, we were afforded spectacular views across the surrounding countryside and Lake Guatapé.
This place is stunning and it is totally worth the climb up here. It's really not that bad, to be honest. I mean, yes, it's a lot of steps, but for this view, I think it's totally worth it.
Lake Guatapé was formed in the 1970s when a local river was dammed in order to generate energy and income for the local area. We spent a bit of time at the top of the rock, had a drink at the cafeteria there before heading back down the same way that we had come up. We then got back onto the bus and headed out to the village of El Peñol, which is a reconstructed version of the original El Peñol, which was flooded when the lake was created. From here we jumped on a boat which took us out into the middle of the lake and which took us past the spire of the El Peñol Cathedral, which is the only remaining indication that there ever was once a village here under the lake. Of course, a beautiful lake like this out in the middle of the countryside is going to attract investment. And so it was in the 1980s that Pablo Escobar had his luxury villa, which now lies in ruins on this peninsula in the lake. It has sort of become something of an attraction to sail past it, and there is talk that in the near future it will be converted into a tourist attraction of some sort, although it's not clear whether it will be related to the property's history or not. Nowadays, the lake is surrounded by multi-million-dollar mansions that are often rented out for the weekend on Airbnb. On the way back, on the boat, we were treated to a local type of musical comedy, which is improvised, created out of the material from the people in the audience. And once the musicians discovered that there was an Australian on board, well, they put together a couple of lines about yours truly.
Tengo un australiano en esta oportunidad. Desde Australia ha venido a visitarnos acá. Aquí no pedimos visa, en mi pueblo colombiano. Quédese viviendo aquí, aunque sea un australiano. Australia aquí está presente, conformando este desfile. Y a mi frente se ha parado un caballero de Chile. Estar aquí en mi país es para que pases bueno. Bienvenido a nuestra tierra. Dios bendiga a los chilenos.
On the way back, Javier and I also got into a bit of a row on the bus with a Karen who was annoyed that we had sat in her seat. Although there was no assigned seating on the bus, we had been sitting in the same seat all day, up until we got back onto the bus after the boat cruise. When we got back onto the bus, someone else was sitting in our seat, so we moved to another seat. But that was when a Karen who had been sitting in that seat previously decided to go off at us. And it started sparking like this row at the back of the bus. And of course, Javier and I were in the center of it. Thankfully, the bus conductor and tour leader managed to intervene and settle the whole thing down. Also, on the way back, we stopped for afternoon tea, and that was where I began my arepa quest. Arepas are a type of traditional Colombian cornbread, of which there are many varieties across Colombia. A few months before I visited Colombia, an Australian artist living in Colombia called Eddie White Jr.
posted on his Instagram a variety of different arepas that can be found across the country. Of course, I took that as a sign that I needed to taste them all. I mean, they're like Pokemon, you have to catch them all, right? So I set about crossing all of them off as I spent the next 7 weeks traveling across Colombia. The first one I tried here was the Antioquian Arepa, which is a very basic one. It's basically corn flour and water thrown together into this kind of puck-shaped thing. It's eaten with different things such as beans, eggs, cheese, butter. However, by itself, this one is quite bland. So apologies to any Arepa Paisa fans here. I appreciate the art of it, but I have to say that my Arepa quest in Colombia only got better from here. And then that was the end of my time in Medellín and Antioquia. I can compare my time in Medellín and Antioquia to my time in Mexico City in that I feel like I was just kind of thrown into the country and didn't really have the time or preparedness to appreciate Medellín as much as I could have. As I was leaving, I felt like I had really only just scratched the surface of Medellín and Antioquia. So it's a place that I will definitely have to go back to and really spend some time getting under the skin of the city and the region. It's also interesting because although I consider myself to be a fairly intrepid traveler, I had heard a lot about Medellín and Colombia and been warned about these places. And, you know, I think that I kind of held back from really relaxing and enjoying and immersing myself in the city as I would have otherwise. The next 7 weeks across Colombia, I really got into the groove of things and caught the vibe in the rest of Colombia. And I can now see where Medellín's place in Colombia is. And as a result, and feeling much more secure and discovering that actually a lot of the warnings about Colombia I felt were rather overhyped. I'd really like to go back to Medellín and fully appreciate it for what it is. Over the next 7 weeks, I just fell in love with Colombia so much, and that's just one of the reasons why I'm wearing this bracelet in this video. It was a country that really weaved its way into my heart. And a lot of that began in Eje Cafetero, my next destination, and on Candles Day, which is an event that celebrates the official beginning of the Christmas season in Colombia. That's coming tomorrow on Latin America Diaries, so make sure that you tune in again then.